All right, this is the Ramble On. This is Nick.
This is Brendan.
Let's talk about Shazam with spoilers.
Oh yeah, there's going to be spoilers. And the first thing I want to discuss with Shazam, first and foremost, why the fuck were all those Christmas themes in that movie? Did they want to release it in December or something?
Well, I mean, the movie takes place around Christmas. I mean, that's fine. It's just saying the time.
I just find it odd that you release a movie with Christmas themes in it in April. That just seems off.
Maybe they were planning on an earlier release, but it didn't get in the way for me. It just kind of established the setting, and we got some Santa jokes out of it.
We did. It's a little nitpick of mine. You know, I just find it a little silly that they did that, but it didn't distract from the. That's not the. I'm stuttering now. All right. Anyway, so in terms of story for Shazam, it was pretty boilerplate safe. You know, pretty.
I mean, it's not that boilerplate. Like, this isn't like boring to the point where I said, "Oh my god, not this again." Like, we had some interesting stuff here. Like, the wizard that gives Shazam his powers is actually pretty fundamentally flawed in the way he's approaching this, because he assumes that like a 9-year-old, 10-year-old child's going to be able to like resist the irresistible power of these demons between the ear. Of course, they're not going to. They're children.
Yeah.
He is operating from a terrible standpoint, and the movie proves the villain right, because Barry Bashan, whatever his name is,
Billy. Yeah, that's it. Billy.
Billy, who gets the powers, is only given them as a last resort, and he abuses them immediately. He immediately turns around and begins abusing his powers, and he has to grow into these powers. So the main villain of the movie, who was another child who was spurned, absolutely had a point. And I actually really enjoyed that plotline with him, because we got a plotline we don't see very often where the movie isn't about the chosen one. It's about every single rejected person before them who was screwed up by not being the chosen one.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And I do want to kind of nitpick real quick about the wizard.
Like, instead of just saying, like, oh, he made the right choice the first time, that's amazing. Instead, it was, after a couple 100,000 choices, he managed to eventually just be forced into picking one, finally.
I know, yeah. It just all seems very random. Like, I mean...
Like, this wizard had no plan. And that's good, because it means that Barry isn't the perfect superhero. He wasn't even chosen perfectly. It's so fitting for a movie like this.
Okay, look, I'm on a deadline. I'm kind of on death's door. You're it, kid. You're it.
Yeah, and like the whole plot of the movie revolves around one kid who was spurned a while back, kind of dedicating his life to rediscovering this realm and entering it, and studying all the commonalities between people that suffer from this, and kind of pursuing the natural end, which is going up to him, spitting in his face, and taking his stupid orb.
Yeah.
Which it turns out is a demon ball that you shove into your eye, but whatever.
Also, so I do kind of want to point out
that... Sans Undertale?
Okay, Megalovania did kind of go off in my head the first time I did see that fucking eye. Yeah, how can you not? But
it's a meme.
Again, this wizard administered the test to the antagonist, but not to Billy.
Well, he couldn't, because the demon ball was gone. He had no chance to say, "Oh, not you either."
Oh, God. But you didn't have, like, a backup test in case the...
No. This was a wizard who had a really shitty plan.
He did! Also, these wizards just suck at this weird succession line because they procrastinate until there's one left.
And then they all just pull their resources into one, where even Billy was like, yeah, that's dumb. I'm going to pull this into, like, 6 other people. We'll have a bunch of superheroes.
Oh, God. They do rightly call that out, which is hilarious.
And he snaps the stick at the end, too, which is great. Yeah, it's got a lot of moments like that in the movie, where they will call it like the common sense thing, or even the trope. Like, there's a scene near the end where they're both standing like a mile apart, and the villain is monologuing at him, and the whole time you have Shazam, in a superhero form, just like, what? No, you're like a mile away. I can't... There's traffic, there's wind, I can't pick out what you're saying. Oh, screw it. And then he just goes and punches him.
I know, and the villain is just continuing his stereotypical bad guy dialogue, like, I will destroy everyone you love. I will rule this world in the palm of my hand.
Yeah, I think that for this movie, though, it's hard to talk about all the good of the movie, because it does a lot of things confidently. It has a good base script to work off of. It has good dialogue. It has some decent moments where it's written to where it can be low budget enough that you don't have to throw $10 trillion at it for it to be a success.
I agree.
You have moments that are just comedic by themselves, and you have a director who's very good with getting the nuts and bolts, getting people from point A to point B, showing off the shots, having decent choreography. You have this wonderful script to work off of, which is huge. So I think the easiest way to talk about this is talk about what few nitpicks we might have, if anything, with this movie.
You hit that on the head. There's very few nitpicks or critiques of this movie because...
I think if there's one minor nitpick, it's how quickly Barry turns around and becomes, the realized hero after he's rejected by his birth mother. Like, the moment she does, he kind of turns and says, "Oh my God, you were right. I was an idiot. Now I believe in family and virtue and all that good stuff right now."
That was a quick 180, and, and again, we've been over this before. That's because, you can only cram so much in a 2-hour film.
He also doesn't ever really have a mourning period after having basically everything he constructed his life around tumble around him.
Right.
Which, I get it. This isn't the kind of movie for that. You're not going to get that in this movie. But it was a little bit quick.
He did rebound super quick, but, time of crisis, and again, 2-hour film.
There's some moments in the movie here and there where, it gets a little bit over cheesy, I guess, but it doesn't happen often enough to really notice it or even be bothered by it. This is cheating because this is one thing I liked, but the ending when the very ending, like not post credits, just the very ending where Barry walks in as Shazam to his brother's lunch,
Oh yeah,
saying, I know this child. I am his best friend. In fact, he taught me everything I know. Oh, I hope you don't mind. I brought a friend, and we see somebody in a Superman outfit, no face, which tells me that they might be rebooting Superman again along those lines, which I am so excited for if they are, which is a Superman who is well-spoken, who's compassionate, who focuses more on saving people than fighting, and possibly more all around like the All-Star Superman, where we have this much more down-to-earth, philosophical conversation about Superman, what he is, what he believes in, why he does what he does for people. And I like the idea of giving a Superman script to somebody who can really take the time to explore him as a character.
Right.
Instead of just punching things. Because
he's not all about the muscle. There is more depth to the Superman character.
And it's always those little moments, like him taking the time to sit with somebody who's on a ledge and just talk them out of things. Or him doing something nice, like going to lunch with someone to help a kid feel better.
Yeah.
Things like that. These are the things that I love about Superman.
No, yeah, and that's totally up Superman's alley. That's altruistic, outgoing good guy, not just the muscle-bound guy that can punch a comet.
I think the way to summarize the ideal Superman on screen for me is that he cares every bit as much about the very small things he does for people as he does about the big things he does. Like,
Right.
They're both equally important to him.
Now, Superman aside, he's not the only superhero with a movie that has received very low marks. Take Green Lantern, Aquaman, some Batman movies.
Yeah, we're probably going to see some reboots.
No, and again, there was a whole roster of superheroes in the DC universe, and for all intents and purposes, they should get their limelight. So hopefully they'll get.
Well, at least Gal Gadot is going to have a job still because hers was the only DC movie that turned a profit.
It did, and it was a refreshing change of pace from the conventional Batman and Superman films. So,
you mean the Zack Snyder two big guys punch each other a bunch and some set pieces? Yeah.
Which, yeah.
Yeah, I think that as far as like the other stuff we talked about, usually themes, effects, characters, there's not that much to talk about here. Like the themes are pretty standard, like believe in yourself, your real family is the one you choose, stuff like that.
Yeah, with great power comes great responsibility and what have you.
Yeah, we've seen it a billion times. This movie has too, and it doesn't dwell on it.
Mm-hmm.
The effects, like we mentioned in the American recut, they are clearly much lower of a budget, and part of me still believes that this was kind of the dark horse for DC where they kind of said, okay, what if we try this weird talky version of the movie with this really cheesy hero that we don't care about?
Which really works.
What if we just kind of throw him out there?
Yeah,
And it worked this time because it was a break in the formula of all of the superhero movies. It wasn't just a break for DC. It was a break from the Marvel superhero movie, which, thank God, I didn't need another generic, way over-the-top movie again.
I know, right. We see it every time. We see all kinds of amazing effects that are just so over the top, so cheesy,
in terms of the
and low
characters,
character. Yeah.
Speaking of characters, I think that I was really impressed by the child actors in this movie, like I mentioned before.
Me too.
The kids all come across as pretty charming, they're pretty friendly, and the characters are smart characters too. Like, this is one where a lot of times we cut back to real people or real civilian reactions to things. Like, this movie takes its time to really point out that they're not just fighting bad guys because it's fun. They're fighting bad guys because they need to keep these people safe around them.
Right.
And they even use those shots as a way to show Barry's own growth. Like, by the end of the movie, he sees a little girl who's scared in a ring booth, and he actually takes the time to comfort her, tell her, to take that tiger, hold it tight. It's going to be okay. I'll be back for you. It's a lovely moment for a superhero movie, and we never got those in DC movies before. We finally got that, and it's such a nice touch.
Right. That's a good point. No, we don't usually see such warm, tender moments between superheroes and civilians.
It's that little moment where a superhero actually cares about the person he's trying to save.
Right. Because be it in Marvel and or DC, we usually see them always in a...
Usually it's like the very middle twist of like, move, we gotta get out of here. My God, there's a little girl to save. It's never that moment where like Captain America might actually take a moment, kneel down, and talk to a little girl. He never does that.
No. They're always above everyone else. The average Joe Schmo, and I
also like Barry's brother in this movie as well.
Eric.
Eric. Which I like him a lot in this movie because he kind of raises two good points. One, you're being a jerk ass, and two, I would kill for those powers.
Right.
Because he's dead on. This brings in the perspective of common people. And there's also a great scene early on with Barry and Eric while they're testing out powers, and he happens to stop a mugger on the street. And this woman is so freaked out, she's like, okay, let's just take the money out of my wallet. I didn't see you. It's also had a great trailer subversion as well, because the trailer everybody saw the trailer where you see him take on the guys at the alcohol store. You saw that they shoot him. He says you're dead, and he throws him out the window and walks out with all the candy stuff. It doesn't play out like that in the movie. It plays out in a way that's actually really fun and subversive, and kind of plays with that kind of cringy humor that sometimes works really well. It works really nicely. And I do want to take a moment too to also talk about the credit sequence, because I adored the credit sequence. Which it was when they had the animation stuff going on for all the adventures.
Yeah.
Just showing the two robbers as a werewolf and a guy with the ultra mega gun that was being fired during the credits comic. You see him messing with Batman, with Superman, with picking up Wonder Woman for the prom.
It's just those fun little sketches that are just
It's fun.
It is.
Have fun with a movie.
And that kind of tone is just so rare to see in superhero movies, because they always try to make it so serious. And
why so serious? You're
right.
You're a disabled foster kid. You got everything.
Which and this is kind of the beauty of the concept of Shazam in himself, because he kind of embodies.
Oh yeah, he's a very silly superhero.
Very much so. He's a kid that becomes a man, and what's the first thing you do?
Get beer.
Go to a strip club. It's that cringy, silly humor.
The strip club stuff was definitely fun as well. So I think it's obvious that we enjoyed the hell out of this film. It's not necessarily the most smart boy film. It doesn't have a big philosophical stage to grandstand on. It doesn't have some big depressing message about Martha.
No.
But it's a fun, solid movie that has a good script behind it, and it's a movie that is quotable and will stick with you for a while. It's one of the better kinds of superhero movies I could think of because it keeps some of the comic booky stuff in there, but it lampshades it enough and makes fun of itself enough that it doesn't get under my skin. Like it's starting to with the Marvel movies where they keep the comic booky stuff and don't lampshade it. So you just think, oh, that's really dumb.
Yeah.
That's really dumb. Yeah. It gets ahead of that feeling, and it does it well, and I hope DC continues this kind of much more lighthearted approach in the future.
As do I.
I have hope for Joker as well following this movie, because if they can follow having an interesting tone and breaking away from the superhero cycle, as it were.
Right. That's a good point. That's a good point. Because there is a plethora of supervillains that also, rightly so, deserve their own limelight.
And this has been pointed out before, but the best way to summarize the way this movie works in relation to Marvel is where with Marvel you have kind of this layer of comedy over the pie filling of actual story that's going on. This is kind of the opposite, where you have this kind of core crust, core pie filling of comedy with kind of the top layer of just of story.
Oh yeah, that's a good analogy as it hits you right in the face.
Where the story kind of connects everything together and keeps it as a coherent story, but it's really about getting that comedy out.
Oh yeah. Because, I mean, let's face it, the superhero franchise, for all intents and purposes, deserves to be mocked in some shape or form. And this movie does rightly call out some of the absurdities in superhero movies. So.
Absolutely. I can't think of much else to talk about with this movie because I mean it's just a very solid movie. It's not pushing any boundaries majorly, but it's also not like failing in any big way. But
Right.
I think that it's just a very solid movie.
Right. No, it doesn't. It doesn't have over the top effects. It relies heavily upon its cast, which did really well, and its characters to support a decent story and concept. So. It's a nice breath of fresh air.
Right, well, my final summary is Shazam is a rock solid movie. It has a strong script. It has good cinematography. It uses its special effects sparingly. It has even child actors that are decent to listen to and watch on the screen. And it's got good enough themes where I'm not going to be bothered by it. I hope that DC continues this trend in the future, and we manage to see some really lightened up, Superman especially is one I'm hoping for.
I
lightened
agree.
up, but just generally a tone where we can enjoy watching a superhero movie about bad guys beating each other up, and have some fun dialogue along the way.
Oh yeah, definitely. It doesn't all have to be so serious. All right, well.
What about your summary?
Oh, my summary? Oh, same. I mean, it's just a fun 2-hour roller coaster that, rightly so, pokes fun at the superhero franchise, and it gives the character some depths, and as you said about the child actors, they're not just blocks of wood. They bring their own energy to this movie, and it works.
All right. Well, this has been Nick.
And this has been Brendan.
Thanks for joining us for our ramble.